Hi everyone, my name is Mark Moikens from Big Mountain Studio, and today we are continuing our Itinerary app series. Specifically, we're going to talk about how to manage your ideas and get things done. And let me ask you something. Have you ever had app ideas, but you weren't quite sure what to do with them? Or maybe you weren't quite sure what your next steps were? Or do you get app ideas frequently, but maybe they seem too big or too numerous and they overwhelm you? If so, then keep watching because we're going to talk about how to organize those ideas and thoughts so they lead to actions that enable you to get your app built. And be sure to subscribe and click on that bell icon below to get notified when the new videos in this series are coming out. Now, if there's one thing I want you to remember from this video, it's this. Simply write down or type up what it is you want to accomplish, what it is you want to do. This is your first step in getting things done. This may seem obvious, but I know for me, I'll get an app idea that will just hang around in my head for weeks until I finally write it down. And I use Google Documents or Google Drive to do this. And I notice something interesting happens too, that when I write down my ideas, is that it opens up my head for new ideas to come in. So writing down ideas is very helpful, as it opens up space in your mind so new ideas can come in. Okay, so now you're starting to write down your ideas for apps. So what do you do with it next? Well, after you get your big app idea, it may seem a little overwhelming at first. So what can you do to help with this? Well, my first suggestion is to take that big app idea of yours and break it down into smaller, manageable parts. Smaller parts are easier to handle than larger ones. So how can you break down your app into smaller parts? Well, you can start with this question. What are some of the screens that will be in my app? You might have an idea of what your app will do and what some of the screens are, and then ask yourself, what are some of the features on those individual screens? So in the app that we're going to make, we'll want to manage our itinerary with details of what we're going to do from day to day. So we need a screen that shows all the trips. We need a screen that shows all the days and activities in that trip. Then we'll need another screen to show a preview of our entire trip. So at this point, we can identify at least 3 screens to start with. So let's start with that, and let's identify some of these tasks that we'll need to do or tasks that we'll need to create. The first thing we'll need is a screen for our trips. We know that. We know we'll need a way to add trips too. This will be a feature or a piece of functionality on that screen. So already we have a screen and a feature. Then we move on to the next screen that we'll have to create, the one that shows a list of days and activities. And we'll need a way to be able to add these days to our trip. And we'll need some functionality to add activities and photos to each of those days. And then finally, I want a screen that shows a summary of all the info that is laid out so you can easily read it or share it or print it. Now, there will be other tasks that we'll need to do too, such as modeling all the data that our app will be using. And then there are also questions about our app that we can't answer right now. So we should turn these into research tasks. Because research is work, it's time, and it's something you want to account for so you can mark it off as done when you finish it. For example, we need time to figure out a color scheme for our app. So we'll add this as a research task. Okay, this isn't all the tasks that we'll need to record, but it's a start. So now that we know we need to record these ideas and tasks somewhere, somehow, let's take a look at some of our options. Okay, a simple tool that you can use is what's called Google Drive. If you have a Gmail address, then it's very simple to set up. Just go to drive.google.com and most likely you'll already have one created for you. And it'll probably have this PDF in here to get you started. Shows you some tips of what it's all about, how to use Google Drive, and so on. Okay, so for our project, what I'm going to do is create a new folder, and I'll call this App Ideas. And you can also give it a color so you can more quickly find it. And let's open up this. And then inside here, I'll create another folder, and I'll call this Itinerary App. Okay. And then usually I'll create a folder for every app idea that I have. So once you do that, then we're talking about how to record our tasks. Well, you could use Google Docs, and it's basically like a Word document, right? Like a a word processor. But you could also use spreadsheet, which might be a little bit easier. So once you create a spreadsheet, you can give it a name. And then from here, you can start recording your ideas or your tasks, the things that we identified earlier. I'll just give it a header like this. And so some of our tasks were creating a screen to show the trips. And let's just add a few more tasks, kind of fill this out. Okay, so here's an example. And what I might do is I'd probably make this whole top row as kind of like your column headers. So I might bold it, and then I might freeze it as well. So freeze the one row. Then that way you can scroll and it always stays on the top. And then from here, you can keep track of any data that you want to. So maybe you can have a checkbox or a column to show if it's complete or not. Or maybe you want to record the date it's completed or who's going to work on it. And then if you have other developers that you're coordinating with or developing, you can also share this spreadsheet with them, and then everybody can update it with who's working on what. So that's one way. That's just an easy way to manage your tasks, but it's not the only way. And if you remember in the previous videos, we used Bitbucket to manage our source code, to keep a version history of our source code. So let's go into Bitbucket and see what they have to offer. Okay, so we're in Bitbucket, and as you can see, we have our Itinerary app repository that we created in our previous videos. And I want you to look at something. So let's go into Itinerary app, and then come down here into settings. And if we scroll down over into this column, we see this item called Issue Tracker. So let's click on that. And here you can say, track your project's feature requests, bug reports, and other project management tasks. So this kind of seems like a good idea, right? So let's try this. We'll create a private issue tracker for now. And the reason why you might want a public issue tracker later on is if you have some beta testers, people that are testing your app before you release it to the App Store, you can allow them to come in here and then they can say, oh, I found this bug, I found that bug. So not only can they record bugs, but they can also request new features. But for now, we're going to start with a private issue tracker. Let's save that. Now there's this item over in this menu over here called Issues. So let's click on that. And we can create a new issue. And issue, it doesn't have to be a bug. It can be a feature too. So we can say we want a task. So we can add a new task for creating the screen to show the trips. Then you can give it any kind of description you want. And you can also assign it to anyone. Right now I'm the only one on my team, so of course it would be assigned to me. And you have different types of priority. I usually just leave it as the default. Usually you can use this when you're trying to prioritize, like which things you want to do first or which bugs you want to fix. I'm just going to leave it as major. And then you can attach files. So maybe if you have like an idea or maybe a screenshot from another app that you're going to use as inspiration, you can attach it. So let's create that. Okay, so this is your task. If you go back to issues, then you can see a list of all of your tasks here. Let's add a couple more just to see what it looks like. Okay, we'll go back to issues, and now we have a list of tasks that we can get started on. And then as you think of more tasks as you're developing, which you will, you can just come back here and keep adding more tasks. And then as you finish them, you just come into your task, and then you can resolve it, mark it as done, give it a note if you need to. And now you know this one is finished. So let's come back here, and you notice number 2 isn't in the list anymore. So you can have a list of all your tasks that you need to do and then mark them off as done as you go along. It's kind of like a to-do list, right? But later you can open up this to the public and then they can add bugs that they find, and then that will be part of your list, and then you can mark off the bugs that's done too. Okay, this is pretty good. You can use this too. It's built right into your source control, so it's with your code. But there's another option that I prefer that I'm going to show you next, and that is with using Trello. And recently, Bitbucket has incorporated Trello into their product as well. So if you just click on boards, and then they tell you it's beta. And this is something recent that they've added, and I really like it because I've used Trello before, and it's a separate website that you connect with. So now it's built right into Bitbucket, so you can manage your tasks all together. So let's see how this works. I'm going to click on Connect to Trello, and then I'm going to create a new board. We'll call it Itinerary App. It defaults it to the repository that you're already in. And then I'll just leave it with the default settings. Okay, great. So as you can see, they kind of default it to, you have your to-do list, and then you drag over these tasks into your doing list so you can see what you're actively working on. And then once you finish them, you drag them over to the done column. So this is kind of like a good way to start managing your project and getting things done. So what you do is you basically just click on here, and then you start adding your tasks. Then I just hit enter to add a new task, and it's that easy. Now you may notice that, I've been putting screen and feature in front of these tasks. You totally don't have to do that. I'm just doing it for the sake of this video because I kind of give you that idea where you start with your screens, and those are smaller parts of your idea, and then you break those parts into smaller parts, and you find all the features on those screens, and you write those down as tasks to do. Okay, so basically the way this works is, say you want to create that screen that shows the trips. Well, you just drag it over here to your doing, and then you start working on it, and then once you finish it, then you just drag it over to done. And this way you can see how much you have to do, what you're currently working on, or what other people on your team are working on, and then you can see how much you've gotten done so far. Alright, that's cool. So I think for the purposes of this project, I'm going to stick with using Trello because I just find it easier to use. And there's more things that we're going to do. But first, let me add more tasks to this to-do list. And then we'll come back and I'll show you some more tips on how to manage these tasks. Okay, good. So I'm back and I've added a bunch of things on my to-do list here. All kinds of features, tasks that I need to do, a lot of prototyping of different screens, and then I've included some new things to find an online data provider so I can create a login, and then we can start sharing activities with friends. We can share our trip with other people, and then we can sync up so we both have the same itinerary. A bunch of cool things like that. So there's a lot of things here that I have. And now even these tasks might seem overwhelming just for this app. And sometimes, I don't know if you guys have ever gotten this feeling, but sometimes you start with a small idea, and then as you start writing things down, like I said, it opens up your head so new ideas come in, and then you just get a flood of new ideas. You write them all down, and then you're like, whoa, this app is going to be huge. So now it's time to take a step back and take a look at the next topic I'd like to introduce to you. And that is this idea of your minimum viable product. How big should your first version of your app be? You have an app with lots of features that you want to include, but are all those features necessary right now? And this is where the idea of the minimum viable product comes into play. So minimum viable product simply means your app has a sufficient amount of features to satisfy your first users. So it's basically your version 1. What's included in your version 1? Well, let's take a look at the word viable. Here's the definition of viable. And it says here it's something that's capable of working successfully. So you need just enough features in your app for it to work successfully. And here's a picture to give you an example. And I love this picture. Every product on the bottom is definitely viable as it has some value to its users. It's functional. It's not like you just have one wheel and then two wheels. You can't give that to your user. Like for example, we're not going to release an app that just has a list of trips that the person wants to take. that has no value to the user at all. They're not going to be able to do anything with that. They have a to-do app that they could use for that, or a notes app, on their phone that they can use. So for the first release of your app, you want to release something so it actually has functional value for your users. And then you can start planning on version 2 of your app. And while you're planning on version 2 and developing version 2, you're going to be getting feedback from the users of version 1. And they might be giving you valuable feedback. They might find some bugs. They might have feature suggestions, things that they want to do in addition to what version 1 already does. And that'll be valuable feedback that you can put into version 2 or maybe version 3. By the way, this picture is from an article that goes more into depth on defining your minimum viable product. You can find the link below in the description of my video as well. So let's go back into Trello and let's figure out our minimum viable product. Something where we have just enough features that we can release for version 1. Okay, so we're back in Trello and we see all these features that I have. And right now everything is just in the to-do list. But what we'll do is, let's separate this out a little bit. We're going to change this a little bit. So we're going to add a list, and we'll call this version 2. And for now, I'm just going to drag this over here. So we're going to look through this to-do list, and we're going to add all things that we don't think we'll need over into the version 2 list. So as an example, this will be our minimum viable product for version 1. If we scroll down, for this first version, I don't think I'm going to make it online. So all the data that the user enters for their trip, for their itinerary, is just going to be local on their phone. They'll take that phone with them on their trip, and they'll have all the data that they need for their trip right on their phone. And for now, they won't be able to share it with anyone. So what we'll do is we'll switch this research task to find an online data provider over to version 2. And with that, we'll also take out these things, these share activities, because that is something that you can do while online as well. We won't need a login screen since they'll be the only ones using the app. Okay, sharing with other users of our app, we'll take that out as well. And we'll just leave it as that for now. So now we have version 2. And for now, we'll just take this and we'll put this over on the back burner. One more over. Yeah, there we go, right there. So as you come up with the new ideas for your app, we can just come over here and we can just add them to version 2 or version 1, whatever we decide to do. All right, cool. Now, there's different ways that you can manage these tasks. So say you want to create this screen, show trips. Actually, before we do that, your first one might be to prototype the trip screen. And then from there, you can just click it and you can do more things with this task. So if you like, you can actually make it into a checklist and call it things to do, for example. And then on here, you say, well, I need to find a designer, if you're not going to do it yourself. And when you find a designer, you're going to have to give them some details. So give designer rough sketches, kind of like an idea of what you want. So this is another way of managing your tasks is, you have something, you can give it a to-do list, and as you complete those things, it says it's 50% done, 100% done. So that's kind of cool right there. I just want to show you some other things that we can do with these tasks. I'm going to delete this for now. Okay, good. So I think you have enough of an idea of how this Trello board works, how to create tasks, and how to move them from the to-do list to doing and then done. Okay, one more thing we need to talk about. Now that we've figured out what we want as our minimum viable product, we have a good idea of all the tasks that we need to accomplish. Now what? Now we need to set a date as to when you want to accomplish this app by. Having a date is a real motivating factor. Goals help us accomplish things that we want to get done, and with a goal, you can turn the ordinary boring task into games. So let's say you want to finish your app by the end of the summer. And I realize that some of you watching this video may want to set a date, but you're a beginning developer. and you're unsure of how long it's going to take you to be able to create your app. Well, that's okay. You can go back to your list of tasks and be sure to add plenty of research tasks or learning tasks to allow yourself time to learn what you believe you need to learn in order to build your app. You might have a task to attend a boot camp or do a course or read a book. Be sure to add a target date to motivate yourself to accomplish those tasks. So for us, I want to finish this video series by the end of the summer, so that is going to be my target date, is at the end of the summer. Now, with your target date in mind, what you can do is you can figure out how many weeks you have left to accomplish your task. And then you can modify your Trello board. So let's do that now. I'll give you some ideas of how you can change it to work more with your system of getting things done. So for the doing, you might want to change this to doing this week. And then pick enough tasks that you can say, oh, I can prototype the screen and then I can create this screen all in 1 week. Maybe you only have 4 hours a week to work on your app. Maybe you have 20 hours, or maybe you can work on your app full time. So you can add more tasks each week. So break it down if you can. Okay, one last tip I want to give you too is make sure all of these tasks that you do create can be done in 1 week. If they can't, then break them down further into smaller parts so you can actually accomplish them in 1 week. Because at the end of the week, you want to see that you've actually accomplished something, that you're actually taking a step closer to finishing your app. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this video and it assists you in getting things done. The main thing to take away from this is to write down your ideas. Write them all down. From there, it's time to create your app. Break down your idea into parts that you can accomplish task by task. We covered a few different options for managing these tasks, but there are many options out there, and I encourage you to explore further and find which one works best for you. For this series, we're going to be using Trello inside of Bitbucket. All right, thanks guys. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. Consider sharing it with your friends on social media. And like I said, be sure to subscribe because there's going to be new videos coming out in the weeks ahead. There's going to be a lot of videos in this Itinerary app series. We still have to go through and do all those tasks that we have on our board. When I say board, I mean the Trello board. And also, if you want to contribute and help out this channel, you can translate the title and the description for this video in your own language so people in your country can also find the video. All right, thanks guys.